My sister made a public announcement about her secret marriage to my husband and demanded that everything I own now belongs to her. So I just laughed and broke the news to her about what really happened 6 months ago. I, 30 female, have been married to Marcus, fake name, 32 male, for 3 years. We met in high school and reconnected several years later. Once we started dating, there was no looking back, and here we are married for 3 years and still going strong. Not everyone was happy about our wedding though, especially my oldest sister, Nina, 32. We went to the same high school and Nina had a major crush on my husband back then, but the feelings weren't mutual as far as I know. In fact, he didn't even know that Nina had a thing for him, which he told me several months into our relationship. Anyway, Nina didn't attend our wedding and neither has she spoken to me ever since I announced my engagement, which was fine by me. She's never liked me. I don't know why. It's not your typical sibling rivalry where I'm the golden child and she's sidelined by me all the time because our parents always treated us equally. And it wasn't even as though I was better than her academically or in sports. Heck, we don't even look different. So I literally never understood why she disliked me so much. I tried to be her friend growing up, but that would always end up getting pushed away. So I just stopped and made my peace with the fact that my oldest sister just didn't like me. And that was that. We weren't close. So her not attending my wedding didn't make much of a difference to me at all. We only meet on holidays or at family events, but even then she doesn't acknowledge me, and neither do I talk to her because it's pretty pointless to try and befriend a person who hates you for no reason. Our relatives are also well aware of our strained relationship. So there aren't many who question it either. It's just established that we don't cross each other's ways at all. But around half a year ago, she did cross me and it was just so pathetic. 6 months back, my husband received a drunken phone call from Nina where she went on to speak at length about how he'd married the wrong sister and that she would be a much better wife for him than I was. She didn't know that she was on a speaker and I was sitting right beside him giggling through her rant. She eventually ended it by announcing that she was going to marry him one way or the other, and she'd even be willing to be his mistress if it came down to it. I was really surprised by that because it was so low. I'm going to be honest, I did think it was funny and pathetic, but I was also angry that she'd even dare to pull something like this, even though I hadn't even done anything to her. So I decided that I'd had enough, and if she was allowed to mess with me, then so was I. I encouraged my husband to flirt with her and give her false hopes. It was cruel, but it was also much needed and well deserved. He told her to come over to our house so they could get married now. And she agreed, readily sounding like she'd won the lottery. Marcus and I set up a hidden camera in our living room the next day. And I personally decorated our room to look as dreamy as possible. Fit for a wedding. Then I sat in the next room when she arrived and watched the drama unfold. It was way too funny to watch her try and flirt with my husband while he just tried to be as stiff as possible. And after a quick exchange of vows and rings, he told her to go away and keep this a secret until he told her that it was safe to tell people. He didn't even kiss her after the vows. And even then the idiot didn't seem to think that something was off. After the mock ceremony, Marcus and I ended up laughing at the video for around half an hour because of how delusional this woman seemed. It was just sad that she was ready to go so low just because she hated me and wanted my husband. Sucks for her that my husband doesn't love anyone other than me. We thought we'd send the video to my parents, but decided that we'd wait for the right time. She would definitely try to pull some crap on us again. And that's when we'd send this to them so that they realize what a trashy person she really is, who was willing to hit on someone else's husband just to get back at her sister. My parents treated us equally, but they were also way too supportive of my sister, even though she didn't deserve it. For instance, they paid for my sister's vacation to Spain for a few months when I was supposed to get married because apparently she was very affected by this wedding and wanted some time away. I hated that they were falling for her victim act, but they were also paying for my wedding venue, so I couldn't complain that they were being unfair. They really weren't. And then again, they let my sister stay with them when I was on my honeymoon because she was feeling lonely. I hated that she would try to use my marriage to her high school crush as a way to gain sympathy from our parents, and they would fall for it again and again. I needed them to know that she was a terrible person and that they didn't have to sympathize with her anymore. So, if I had to do something sly and backhanded, then I was ready to do that as well. I just didn't want my parents falling for my sister's act anymore. We had to wait for the right time to send it to my parents though, because I knew that if I told them we'd pulled this off just because of a drunk phone call, they would tell me that I was being just as bad as her and it would lead nowhere. So I had to wait for her to mess up somehow. A few days back, my sister finally publicly announced that she's been married to Marcus for half a year now. And even though they've been keeping it under wraps up until now, she's finally ready to own up to it. She also added that she was giving me one day to vacate the house and hand over all my jewelry since now as Marcus's wife, she owns everything that once used to be mine. Marcus and I were at home that day, and our inbox was instantly flooded with messages while our phones rang off the hook with noisy relatives asking about what was going on. After their fake wedding, Nina would often text Marcus and tell him that she loved him and would constantly ask about when exactly they'd announce their love to the world. Marcus would probably reply once a month and would always tell her that they'd do it when the time was right. The last time she texted was 3 weeks ago, and I guess she just couldn't wait anymore. I was surprised that she'd actually gone ahead and done something so crazy, but well, I knew this was bound to happen someday. She was always going to snap and do something insanely stupid and ridiculous, and this was it. Marcus decided to call her up and even recorded the call so that I'd have more proof to show to my parents. Even on the phone call, she was pretty confident in spite of the fact that Marcus had immediately handed over his phone to me. For whatever reason, she genuinely believed that she and Marcus were still actually married. She told me that begging her or pleading with her wasn't going to change the reality. So I could just save my breath and instead use my energy to think about what I would do now that I didn't have anything. It was so ridiculous that I actually ended up laughing in her face before I told her the truth about what had happened 6 months ago. Of course, she refused to believe me and told me to put her on the phone with her husband. So I handed Marcus his phone. And after that, he had to convince Nina for like 10 minutes before she actually realized that she'd been played for a fall. I don't know why exactly she'd even fallen for any of this, since there was no priest officiating the wedding, no paperwork, and even her own so-called husband wasn't willing to speak to her more than once a month. I think anyone with even half a brain cell would have realized that this was all fake and she'd been screwed over if there were so many hints, but she's too delusional. Once she did realize though, she totally snapped and started screaming at us about how we just ruined her reputation in life and that we were downright evil and immoral for doing this to her. She was even sobbing about how I destroyed her life.